Hello, this is Suzanne Bishop with the eClinical Forum, and I want to thank you all for joining us today for this technology showcase that is being offered by Diligent to talk about their um, platform on simplifying vendor selection and qualification with standards and centralized approaches. I want to thank particular John Jordan and Patty Luchin for joining us to present this topic. I just want to remind everyone that eClinical Forum is vendor neutral. We don't endorse any particular vendor or product, but the technology showcases are a unique opportunity that our eClinical Forum members have asked us to provide, wherein they can see the products and services that are being offered by the other members of the eClinical Forum. So with that, I want to again thank John and Patty and turn it over to them.
Okay, thank you, Suzanne. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar presented by the eClinical Forum, and thank you to Suzanne and Richard for all you do with the forum. It's a great group, and we're very happy to be a part of it. We're going to start off today. Myself and Patty Luchin are going to take you through some slides here, and I'm going to do a demonstration towards the end of the hour. And Patty's going to start us off with a little bit of an overview of how Diligent got started and how it was born out of the Avoca group. So with that, I'll present Patty Luchin, the CEO and founder of the Avoca group and Diligent Pharma. Patty?
Yeah, thanks so much, John, and thanks, Suzanne, for this opportunity. Yeah, you could go to the next slide, John. So yeah, I'm just going to quickly provide some background and context for how Diligent Pharma came about and how we developed this platform. The Avoca Group's been around for a while. We're celebrating our 20 years this year. We have these three aspects to our business now. I started the company as a research and consulting firm and formed the Quality Consortium in 2012. Diligent really is an offshoot of the AQC, which, I'll describe that in a moment. As the company has evolved and changed, we've gotten into some new areas, but one thing that has not changed is our sort of the original purpose and passion for starting the company, which is really to make a difference in clinical trials and drive improvement, through this lens of quality and compliance. So these three areas are separate, but they're sort of connected through this focus of quality and compliance. Next slide, John. So the consortium is a pre-competitive collaborative of pharma, biotech, CROs, other types of service providers. We have a little over 100 members now. We essentially do three things with the consortium. We're conducting research with our members. We're putting forward leading practices, tools, guidelines, templates that are aligned to proactive quality and risk management. And we provide collaboration opportunities through our summits, our webinars, our online community. We're working across about 11 different domains with the consortium, things like oversight, risk management, quality management systems. I have to be honest and say that qualification actually was not on my radar back in 2011, 2012, when we started the consortium. It came about because the executives in our original group of companies back in 2012, 2013 really pointed it out as an area of need and challenge in the industry, asked us if we could address it, and we did research and sort of characterize the challenge and then moved forward in creating a separate work stream focused on qualification. I'll show you our members. We have a pretty diverse member group, large companies as well as small on both the sponsor side as well as the provider side. If you're on this call and you don't see your company name and you're interested, just get in touch with John. I show this slide often because so many people who are actually part of the consortium don't even know that their companies are members of the consortium. So if your company is on the slide, you actually have access to all of the qualification standards, tools, templates that are available in our Knowledge Center. So get in touch with us if you are a member and you don't have access to all of this information. John's actually going to talk a little bit about the standards and what we've developed. And then just to give you sort of the background on how Diligent came about, as I mentioned, it was brought to us as an area of need back in 2012, 2013. We launched the Standards Initiative. That now is a complete body of work where we tapped into our, at the time, there was maybe 40, 50 companies, but we had an advisory board of 22 organizations that really helped us to create standard criteria for qualifying clinical service providers, and these standards are mapped to regulatory guidance. Our advisory board suggested that the standards were adding value in that, now companies actually have one common set of criteria, common set of tools that they could utilize for qualification of their providers, but that the real value would be in centralizing the activity itself. So Diligent was an idea that was brought to us by our members in terms of centralizing and making available completed RFIs to our members. So we launched a pilot in 2016. I totally underestimated how challenging it would be to get this pilot off the ground because it truly is a chicken and egg thing with collecting information in a centralized way. But it was a successful pilot in that we had 13 pharma companies participate, about 50 providers. We processed hundreds of RFIs through a low-tech platform, and we conducted multi-sponsor qualification assessments, which I don't think had ever really been done in the industry before, all tied to this rigorous set of standards that we developed as part of the AQC. You could keep going there, John. And some of the companies that actually got high value from participating in the pilot, which we funded as a company, they stepped forward and really helped us to provide the help that we needed to build the tech platform. And that's really where we are now. And John is going to really get into some detail about what the Diligent Qualification Platform does. We moved into version 2 of the platform this year, and at the same time, we were approached by Tufts early in the year to work with them to really characterize the spend and what's happening in the industry right now in terms of qualification, especially given how the industry is evolving. So, this first half of the year has been very interesting and exciting for Diligent, and we're so happy to have this opportunity to share where we are with you. I do want to say that we learned so much from the questions that were asked when we had the opportunity to present Diligent. So love to hear from you either by having you chime in, interrupt us with questions, or use the chat function. And we'll be I'll keeping an eye on the questions throughout the webinar here, and we'll make sure we reserve some time at the end to get them answered. And I'm going to turn it back over to you, John, to really get into what the platform is about.
Okay, great. Thank you, Patty. So building on what Patty just presented for us, before I get into that, I wanted to just kind of lay the groundwork for where we are right now. And the best way to do that is a definition of terms that we're going to be using over the next 40 minutes or so. Auditors, I think that's fairly self-explanatory. Qualified personnel, either part of the sponsors group, the sponsor organization, or third-party personnel hired to perform the audit. A request for information, a listing of questions essentially that details the capabilities, experiences, processes that the vendor, the provider has. You receive that RFI and then you do your analysis off of that. Based on the RFIs that you receive, you will then potentially select certain providers for an RFP to get a proposal. Once you're through the proposal, then there's two ways to go. VQA, and I'm sorry, we're getting a lot of background noise here, Suzanne. Is there, can we ask folks to mute maybe?
From my end, it looks like everyone is muted, but everybody should check their cells. Thanks.
Okay. But so the VQAs and the vendor audits, there's a differentiation I like to make it at the beginning. A vendor qualification assessment, or a VQA, is what we typically call a qualification visit prior to contracting. So if you've got, you've started developing your protocol, you've identified the services that you need for that particular study, you then identify the vendors that you want, you're going to go through the RFI, RFP process, and then before the study actually starts, you'll have to do that qualification visit. That's prior to contracting, prior to the start of the study. Now, for a vendor audit, that's typically like a CRO that you maybe been working with for many years, but you haven't done an audit of them for 2 years, is the typical time frame in the industry. So 2 years comes up, you have to do another audit of that vendor. That's a different effort than the vendor qualification assessment. So I'd just like to make that clear, that that's after the contract's in place. You've already been working with them. You're sort of doing a category refresh of that particular provider. So with those terms defined, I'll go directly into the diligent solution. It's built, as Patty said, it's built on the core of the Avoca Quality Consortium, the standards that were developed there through the leadership advisory boards and the working groups that came out of the Avoca Quality Consortium. They developed the core standards. We have a core standard, and then we have specific standards for different services that are provided. It's very critical from the sponsor standpoint to be rigorous with regards to quality and compliance, and those standards help you maintain that rigor. It's also very effective for managing change, as you'll see as we go through the presentation here. Okay, so this is kind of the nutshell slide for you. This is where we are on the left is the current process, and what Diligent provides is on the right. So on the left, you have multi-sponsors, each having a touch point with multiple providers. What the Diligent solution does is it kind of cuts down that redundancy and that duplication of effort. The stories I like to tell, and some of you maybe have even heard this from past discussions with me, that when I was on the vendor side, I would have sponsor A, sponsor B, and sponsor C coming in 3 weeks in a row, and out of those discussions, out of those qualification visits, maybe 90 to 95% of the content that I shared with them as a vendor was exactly the same. It was the same information, it was the same data, it was the same presentations. So there was maybe somewhere between 5 and 10% of uniqueness for each one of those sponsors. So the Diligent solution allows us to capitalize on that redundancy, and we could potentially do multiple sponsors satisfying their qualification needs with one visit to a vendor, and we're going to talk about the efficiencies on the vendor side as well. So in the current situation within the industry, there are really 3 kind of branches of trouble, so to speak. We have dysfunction within the current practices. They're, as I said, redundant, they're inefficient, and there's a lot of risk with regards to delays of a study startup. With the middle there, you see the regulatory changes and compliance issues. As regulations change, as different white papers and different guidances come out from the regulators, there's a management of that change that needs to take place. And we do that on the Avoca Quality Consortium side, which builds into the Diligent solution. So we're relieving a significant burden on that side. And then on the right, you see there the increased pressure when it comes to the emergence of new technologies. When you're talking about AI pulling EHR data for patient recruitment, that's something new that hasn't been done before. And there's a certain lack of a comfort level for sponsors to maybe take that step and start doing some of these new things because they're not familiar with it, and there is a fear factor, so to speak. So with all that, you see on the bottom there's the 2 checkpoints that the main one that you see is that there's a cost involved with it. if you have a finding and there's a delay in the submission, or there's a a refusal to file, those are very costly mistakes that are hard to come back from. And by doing this diligence up front with regards to compliance and regulatory rigor, that is a big plus for the sponsors on the hook for getting those submissions in. So again, we go back to the industry insanity of the current process. We have, we've estimated somewhere around 4,000 providers that are doing business with life sciences pharma, with life sciences sponsors, and probably somewhere around a line of 2,000 sponsors from pharma and biotechs. And each one of those has a relationship with their vendors, and each one of those has a touch point with those vendors. And this overlap, this redundancy is really tough. The story I like to tell on the provider side, we had one CRO that we were speaking to recently that earlier in the year, they made the comment that they had 300 qualifications in 2018. And that's like a qualification a day, or multiple qualifications a day. It's a high burden that you're putting on the vendors to have to manage that. So as I said, the diligent solution is looking at cutting that redundancy and making it much more efficient. So we're mitigating the risk, ensuring compliance, reducing the costs, making efficiencies that are not there now. Obviously, all of that builds into shorter time frames and the potential to save time on study startup, and study startups time savings flow into the study conduct and study closeout, and potentially you're getting product to market faster. And then the innovation side, where we're able to develop the standards, we're able to work with these vendors and make sure that they're providing you with the content that is meaningful to you. So we're giving you a comfort level that we've done a review of the content that they're giving you. We've gone back and forth with them from a quality standpoint, and we're ensuring that you're getting quality information from these existing providers, but also with the emerging technologies. Okay, so the standardization and centralized qualification solution is really just what we're talking about here with regards to a central repository of completed RFIs, where you're able to take those RFIs. Once it's been released by the vendor, it's there within the portal for you to access at any point in time. You'll have the ability to download it in PDF or Excel format. There's rapid visibility to the providers for a service area, which we're going to go through during the demonstration. So you'll be able to compare and do your analysis in a much more efficient manner. The next two are regarding, which we all know in the life sciences industry is a reality of pain that we're in with regards to organizations merging and making acquisitions. So it's easily assimilated within merging organizations if you're following these standards. And if sponsor A acquires sponsor B, and they have very disparate quality management systems and qualification processes, that's a very difficult task. When you're lined up and using standards, it makes it much more easy. Obviously, there's a reduced administrative cost to complete and collect those RFIs, and the sponsors and providers that are participating in the platform have seen obviously operational efficiencies, timeline improvement, and the information that we're sharing between those two parties are definitely of a higher quality. So now within the platform itself, the RFI content, we have the core services with monitoring, data management, medical writing, stats, and phase one. But we also have these endpoint services with regards to specific service providers that maybe do something that a CRO doesn't do. And then as you see on the right there, we also have the emerging technologies, where we have standards in development right now for some of the newer technologies that are being utilized within the industry. So for sponsors, the core benefits are a simplified process, a high quality vendor assessment meeting the regulations, high quality auditors, and a comprehensive process with strong documentation. And at the end of the day, you're real-time ready for an inspection. It's reducing the burden on vendors hosting the BQA, so you're actually doing your your providers a favor by reducing the volume that that they have to host you. Not that they don't like seeing you, but some of them probably wouldn't like seeing all of you every other week. You reducing the sponsors' cost for VQA. The story I like to tell on that is with regards to when I was on the sponsor side, we would be, putting together a qualification team. It would be anywhere from 2 to 3 people, and it could be, in certain cases, we had up to 6, maybe 7 people that, between the clinical team, IT, quality, data management, various different resources throughout the organization are pulled together for this qualification visit, and all of their time and energy that they should be spending on their day job is spent on this qualification effort. And that all gets charged to the study budget. And that study budget isn't really sliced and diced to the point where, okay, this is what the qualification is really costing my organization. When you put that into the mix, it's really you really see a good return on investment with the diligent solution. Obviously, a reduced cycle time from the time that you say a vendor is needed to the time that you're able to contract with them and they're a qualified resource for you. Our goal is to get it down to 30 days. That's our immediate goal. This morning on the session, Patty made a good point that I'll kind of take from her from this morning session. That's our goal at this point in time, is to shoot for 30 days from beginning to end of the process. As the adoption and the use of the diligent solution is brought on to the industry, we can see that being cut down significantly. At some point in time where the vendors are out there and ready to go for you, you could have a qualification done within a week or so. So you're really seeing an ability to cut down a significant portion of that upfront time during study startup. And then eventually,
the other thing that we heard from our sponsors during the pilot was just this notion of just being able to reallocate staff to higher value activities. So, for one company, we were doing the category refresh for all of their lab providers, and it just enabled their team to really focus more on sort of risk-based identification of providers and managing the relationships rather than all the sort of administrative burden associated with the RFI process.
Right. Okay, and then lastly there you see purchasing of an existing qualification. We've gotten feedback from some of the smaller and mid-sized pharmas and biotechs that they don't necessarily have the bandwidth and they don't have the resources to expend on this qualification effort. So they want to have the ability that if we go out and qualify a vendor for a large pharma, if we're able to anonymize that report, put it out there for them to be able to say, okay, we've done our due diligence. Here's the qualification for this from a month ago. There's really no need for me to go back out because Diligent has already done the qualification of this particular provider. So I don't need to check the SOPs and training records again. They've already done it a month ago. So if I get this report, then I'm meeting my regulatory requirements. And then on the provider side, the benefits are obviously the potential to significantly reduce the volume of the vendor qualification assessments. If we're able to perform, one qualification assessment for 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 sponsors, that's obviously reducing the amount of sponsors that they have to host for a qualification assessment. So you see a significant savings on that. As I said, multiple sponsors being satisfied for a single qualification assessment, reducing the administrative costs for non-billable resources, and that's really when we were hosting sponsors coming in from the vendor side. I would have sales there, I would have the quality group there, I would have the customer support, I would have operations in there with me. So all of those resources that are pulled in during that qualification effort, that happens multiple times a month, many times a year. All of that is savings on the vendor side. The vendor also gets increased visibility for their service offerings to a wide range of sponsors that are on the platform. So as sponsors are looking for a particular service, they're going to be able to see you as a vendor, as a provider of that service, and potentially request an RFI from you that they may not have done without being on the platform. The RFI process for completion is simplified, so you only have to do it one time for the core, and then any additional services that you provide, you'd be able to fill out one RFI and then manage it within the platform. So if there are changes, as I said before, changes that we recognize within the industry with regards to regulations or guidances, we then update that within the AQC Knowledge Center on the standards, and that is then in turn ported over to the diligent solution, so that you have up-to-date standards within the platform that you don't have to necessarily manage that within internal systems. Okay, so the importance of qualification, obviously mitigating risk and being inspection ready. The ICH update recently had made a very clear statement with regards to vendor oversight. So that actually is an impetus for us to provide this service for the industry and make this a little bit more of a efficient, more meaningful process for you. And then improve quality of execution and drive efficiency within the providers as well. You're getting better providers if they're providing you with better information and the providers are giving you better service. We're setting the expectations for that good relationship. The framework is set up for you within the platform, and as you see here, it's inspection ready at all times. Once you as a provider have your RFI in the platform, it's going to be updated. We're going to be reaching out to you as a provider every 6 months to ensure that it is up to date. There are no changes within your organization. Maybe there was an acquisition. Maybe there was a change in your organization. We'll be giving you those reminders and touch points to say, come in and do an update to your RFI because it's been a little bit of time. Okay, so what we hear in the industry, what we're hearing from sponsors and providers that are using the solution, they're saying what steps are required to correctly qualify these vendors. The guidelines aren't clear. We need help interpreting them. Is our assessment documentation correct? We need help determining how to improve that process and prioritize the activities. Can you, as diligent, can you provide additional resources to help me with the ongoing qualification? And then finally, as we spoke about earlier, how do I assess these emerging technologies, these new, fancy new technologies that are out there? How do I get a grip around them? And really, that's what we're here to help you with on the diligent side. So the sane approach, as we saw before, the insane approach was a lot of arrows going back and forth. So as I said, the standards in the middle sort of relieves a lot of that redundancy and creates a lot of efficiencies. And then we've come up with some estimates, and I think this is definitely on the low side. We lowballed it so that you don't think we're trying to get any shock value out of this. But the costs to the industry are significant. If a provider has 50 qualifications a year, we've estimated it at $10,000. That's $500,000 that provider is spending on qualifications. If a sponsor has 12 VQAs a year, the cost to them being about $20,000 again, which I think is significantly lower than it actually is. The cost to them is about $240,000 a year. So if you apply the 4,000 providers and the 2,000 sponsors, that's close to $2.5 billion that we're costing the industry. And as everybody knows, time is money. Blockbusters typically come out at about $1 billion a year from a revenue standpoint. A lost day is about 2.7 million. So if a VQA delays the start of a trial, that has implications down the road for significant losses. Cycle time improvements obviously, make way for savings and increased revenue down the road. And the current process being 60, sometimes well more than that, and potentially delaying a start of getting a first patient in or a first site initiation, or delaying an investigator meeting. All of that has impacts that cost sponsors significantly. So 30 days of additional sales on the life of the patent, about $82 million. So we think that's a significant cost, but at Avoca and Diligent, we are always thinking from the patient's point of view, and we really see this as the main point. We're getting these new treatments out there to the patients from the sponsors and through the providers. We're getting it out to them quicker. So we're seeing this as a very fruitful and a very benevolent point that we want to make life better for everybody as well. So now I'll quickly go through the overall solution with regards to Diligent. We have the consulting services where we do the qualification assessments for you. We provide you with continuous support for the oversight of the vendors, strategic planning for portfolio management, and all of that feeds into the technology of the platform itself, the centralized database of RFIs, and the ability to request and manage your qualification assessments through that platform. And then on the right, the standards and tools that we spoke about coming out of the Quality Consortium. Those standards and tools are what feed into the Diligent platform. So it's kind of a three-pronged approach here between the standards, the technology, and the services that we provide. And then my little B here, there's a bit of buzz in the industry. I wouldn't say it's a hot topic, but it's definitely a topic being discussed. As Patty mentioned, we're working with the Tufts Center for Study of Drug Development, and we're working with them on the study right now, the working group that they put together to kind of quantify exactly what is being expended within the qualification process, what is the time and resource burden, and where there are opportunities to improve. The volume is high and the numbers vary, so there's a lot of differences between various different organizations, and we're able to capture that. And overall, the process and sub-processes have a wide variation as well. So we're going to be able to get benchmarks and some real good data out of this study to be able to build upon. And then the Society for Clinical Data Management, the SCDM, they have a soon-to-be published, I think it's a new volume of one of their manuals on good clinical data management practices. They have a separate chapter that they've developed with regards to vendor selection and management. So it's definitely something that's out there and being talked about and being thought about in a lot of organizations. So we're getting towards the end of the slideshow, and we'll get into questions and answers in the demonstration shortly. But the real point here is the image that you see. The services that we provide, the gap assessments, the process harmonization, integrating provider list, consulting services, training, and end user support. That's all part of the solution. But the image that you see there, the top line going left to right, is the traditional method where you manually search for the providers. Then once you've accumulated enough, and you say, okay, these are the providers we wish to find information out on, you have to send out the RFIs. You give them a few weeks to respond to that RFI. Once the RFI comes back in, you have to do your analysis. Then eventually you qualify, and you're talking about somewhere in the 30, 60, potentially 90-day timeline there. On the bottom with the Diligent solution, you're able to search through the platform for the providers that you want, request the RFIs immediately through the platform, have a response within 1 to 2 days, and then you're able to review that RFI immediately upon release by the vendor. And then you're able to start your qualification process much sooner on the timeline. So with that, we will open it up. I don't know if Patty, if any questions came up on the chat.
We don't have any questions on the chat, but I don't know if I think it's a small enough group that people could ask questions as well if they want to unmute momentarily.
All right, well, I'll take that as no questions. And looking at the time, if any questions do come up, I think we probably will have a few minutes at the end if any do come up from there. So now I'm going to go directly into the platform now. I'm sorry, no. First, I'm going to show you the Diligent website, diligentpharma.com. I won't go through the whole website, but if you click on the RFIs and partners section over here on the right, you're able to see here are the current vendors that are available and the RFIs that we have within the system. This is fairly up to date, but you're able to click on a column heading and be able to see which services these providers are in there for. And then the next thing I'm going to show you is the Avoca Quality Consortium. As members of the Quality Consortium, if you are a member, you have access to the Knowledge Center. And within the Knowledge Center, I have to go back to show you that. Within the Knowledge Center, we have RFIs or standards and tools available to you. We have the core standard and then a standard for each of the services that may be provided with regards to clinical service providers. So within there, you'd be able to click on the core standards. And this is the RFI template that was developed by the AQC. And this RFI template is what we've ported over into the Diligent platform. So I'm not going to take you through the whole document, obviously, but these are the essential components within the core document, the core RFI. So each one of those specific RFIs for the services have similar table of contents, relevant, obviously, to the service being provided. Okay, so now I'm going to sign in.
And while John's signing in, I just wanted to make the point that you know, if you are a member of the AQC, you have access, and we encourage you to use the standards and the RFIs, even if you're not ready to move to a centralized platform, because you know, as John pointed out earlier, just the sheer number of different templates floating around in the industry certainly doesn't serve anyone. And so, you know, those are available to everybody who is part of the consortium without any obligation to be part of the Diligent platform.
Right. Okay, so I've signed in as a sponsor, so you can see up here in the upper left-hand corner, you're in the sponsor portal at this point in time. And this is the dashboard. You have some tiles here with the number of providers. You'd be able to click on that, requested RFIs, released RFIs, and the number of users in your organization on the platform. And then we have an algorithm here that we provide with the estimated hours saved for using the platform as opposed to the traditional process. So from here, the user would be able to either click over here on the left for find providers or click directly on the tile, and you get your find providers page here. You'd be able to list through the providers that are available within the platform, or you'd be able to click on advanced search criteria. So you'd be able to click on your services available, company size, geographic coverage of a vendor, and the countries that they do business in. All of this is available within the platform. If your vendor is not in there, you'd be able to also go here and request a new provider, notify us, this is a provider you want on the platform, give us the contact information, and give us the contact information, and we would then reach out to that provider, onboard them onto the platform, and we would notify you that their RFI is now available to you. Okay, so for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to go with a search here in the search bar, and MegaClin CRO is my go-to guy here. So MegaClin is a mid-sized company. It's a CRO, and it gives you an overview of exactly what they're providing and gives you the website. So this is their profile. From here, you'd be able to request an RFI or request an assessment. So I'll directly from here request an RFI, and you can see these are the RFIs that are available to me from this particular provider. So for today, I will just click the CRO clinical monitoring. It tells you over here on the left what RFI you're requesting. Here's where you'd be able to identify, is it a new project or a new program, or is it a category refresh? What is your expected timeline? We'll just say end of July. Any additional details around the request, and then any additional questions that maybe are specific to your study or your program that were not included in the standard RFI that we're requesting right now. So you may have something on a biomarker or on a particular technology that is being utilized, and you'd be able to add your individual questions here. And then you would request that RFI. and then you'd be able to.
We do keep those questions completely confidential, so that is only known within your own company, obviously. Those additional questions.
Right. So now, oh, I got the wrong one. So now I'm signed in as a provider. You see up here in the upper left-hand corner, it's the provider portal. So now I'm going to go back to the dashboard, and I can see I have 3 requested RFIs out there. I have 2 in my draft, and I have 12 that have been delivered. I have 11 overall published that are available within the platform. So the provider would be able to click on the requested RFIs there on the left-hand side or on the tile itself, and we'd be able to see, okay, here's the one that we just did for CRO clinical monitoring. So as a provider, I would click on that to review it. I would see the information that was included on that request, and then I would provide any answers to the particular questions that may have been a part of that. And then I would have the opportunity to either reject it if, for instance, there was a change in information or content within the RFI and you need to update it as a provider. You'd be able to reject it, provide us with those reasons, and we would communicate that back to the sponsor. But for demonstration purposes, I'll release it. And then go back to my sponsor portal here. And I'll click on my released RFIs. And I'll come over here. And now you'll see, here's the CRO clinical monitoring. And I'd be able to click on this and view it. And here's the actual RFI itself. All of the content that was in there. I would also be able to click on the query response and be able to see the request itself and any answers provided. And as Patty mentioned, this is all viewable only to you and your organization. And then the last thing I'll show you is just the ability to download it directly into Excel or PDF format so you can put it in your trial master files or any kind of documentation needs that you have. So from this point, we've completed the RFI. You would do your analysis, and now you're going to probably want to create, you're going to want to request a qualification assessment. So you'd be able to go to your qualification assessment request over here. We have 2 that are out there actually right now, so I'm going to create a new one. So I choose MegaClin CRO. All of the information is populated for you. You would have to put in any information with regards to sites that you want to be included in the qualification, any particular services that may be included. I'll choose other, and I'll just put that. And then you'd be able to tell us when you need this by. So with the regards to the date, you've got a study starting in October. So, or let's say you have it starting in September. So we'll say August 22nd, you want the report by. Based on that, you want to have the assessment actually performed at some point between August 5th and August 14th. And then this is the multi-sponsor assessment check. If it's a standard qualification assessment, you'd be able to leave this. You'd be able to leave this check, and then notification would go out to all the other sponsors within the platform, and they would be able to join in on this assessment. So if they see, okay, this particular vendor, I have them for a study starting in October, I'm going to eventually have to qualify them. I'm just going to jump on board of this effort. The obvious, anonymity remains where that sponsor wouldn't know about sponsor A, wouldn't know about sponsor B, and sponsor B wouldn't know about sponsor A. Any particular questions that are asked for each sponsor would only be fed back to that sponsor. So there's definitely that, that privacy, that concern is covered from multi-sponsor assessment. And then any additional details that we take from you, and I would submit this request. And then the request goes off to diligent and to the provider. We work with the provider to formalize the dates. We start to schedule the auditor, and then we work with you as a sponsor to formalize the agenda and the audit plan. We then conduct the visit and then post the report at the end of the visit to your calendar here. So here's one that you can see, the one that we just created. You'd be able to click on that, and once the assessment is complete, you'd be able to go through and pull your report directly from here. So that's the assessment side. We talked about the RFI, and we're a little bit ahead of time here. So with that, I'll just take us back to the slideshow. And open it back up to questions. If anybody has a question, please chime in. But our strategy here is to move from the status quo up to a new value with regards to the standards, the centralized platform, and the expert auditors within the diligent solution. And as it says there, we're currently enlisting strategic partners both on the sponsor and provider side. So we're happy to take any questions at this point. And I am always available, so feel free to reach out to me following this if you have any further questions or would like a demo or would like any further information regarding the diligent solution. Patty, anything you want to add to wrap up?
Yeah. What has been apparent to me over the last few years, since we've been at this for a while, the conversation has really changed compared to when we first introduced this 4 or 5 years ago. There was more of kind of an allergic reaction to the idea of multi-sponsor assessments. And even, not as much, but even with the idea of centralizing RFI information in a platform, I found that there's a lot more openness now. There's not as much concern from a regulatory standpoint. I think we went to the FDA. We've talked with regulators about whether this is an issue to drive efficiency, and the message we got back was, absolutely not. Of course, they can't endorse any particular platform, but the regulators are completely open to the concept. But I think the biggest challenge is just changing mindsets within individual companies. And so I would love to know, for the people that are participating in this webinar, if there are still concerns about the multi-sponsor assessments, and if so, if you're willing to kind of share what they might be. And you could do it through the chat, or you could do it afterwards by reaching out to John. But I've personally seen more openness. I don't know if you want to comment on that, John, because I know you've been in very specific conversations with our clients and our partners. I've just experienced that myself, that it seems like the industry is coming around to this idea. And whenever you introduce anything new, of course, in our industry, it takes a while to take hold. But I really would be curious to know if there's anybody who's participating, just sort of shaking their head, thinking, I don't think this is going to fly within my organization, because we would love to know why, and and if we can, address any concerns. And we also know that in some cases, it's just not a good fit too. So we're not trying to force fit anything.
Right.
Does anybody want to jump in who's participating in the webinar?
These shy North Americans, we had
we had questions this morning from the Europeans, and well, it is after lunch. People may be digesting.
All right. Well, I think we'll just leave it at that. We're here for you, so feel free to reach out with any questions or any follow up. But I'll personally say, and I think I speak for Patty, thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm very happy to be able to present this to you, and thank you again, Suzanne, and the eClinical Forum for giving us this opportunity.
Well, thank you very much to John and Patty. And Just a reminder to all of you that the eClinical Forum Technology Showcases are available to any member companies. So if you would like to host one, just get a hold of me, or if you would like to ask that someone else host one, send me a note and I'll see if I can set one up. So thank you to Diligent and John and Patty, and everyone have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
Dan. Bye, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye.